Welcome to my final update video I'll be making for Smith of Kitava in the 0.2 Path of Exile 2 patch, where I've kind of reached level 97 and I'm gonna have a happy point of where I am in terms of tankiness and damage of the build. Certainly there are more improvements that I could be doing, but I think I've got the build to a point where everything now is starting to be just marginal improvements on the build, but all of the core clearing abilities as well as damage is there, and there isn't going to be anything super significant besides just like tuning the items to get more HP and to do a little more damage by getting a better mace, for example. So with that being said, I'd like to go over with the skill gem. So the skill gems that this build is mainly going to be using is Leap Slam, Hammer the Gods, and Rolling Slam. For the support gems on Leap Slam, I'm a big fan of Holy Descent. This generates a lot of additional healing when you land, so you get 5% maximum life per second and reduces curses by 50%. The curses is a nice bonus, but if we see here, I go from 449 health per second to basically 700. So that is a really nice survivability buff. While this may be something that you can think of switching out if you're not dying very often, this is just like a really nice boost in terms of regeneration and sustain in the middle of a fight, as well as when you run out of flasks for a boss fight, all of that extra regen comes in handy. I also use Magnified Effect. This significantly increases the splash area of the slam and makes it a lot easier to clear large mobs. Momentum is another one that just adds 40% more damage when you travel a certain distance. So as long as you're not point blank leap slamming, you're going to do 40% more damage, and I think this is one of the biggest more damage skill gems that you can use. Martial Tempo is just kind of quality of life, just to be a little bit faster here. Not really necessary, and definitely can be replaced with more damage if you need it and you're not really one-shotting the mobs. Close Combat is just another damage increase. When you land, if the enemies are really close to you, it'll do a lot of damage and hopefully proc Herald of Ash to kind of just like spread all of that damage around. You can replace this with any other elemental damage, but if you'll notice, I will have them on Hammer of the Gods just to do more boss DPS, where I'm kind of clearing maps perfectly fine without it. So the core support gems for Hammer of the Gods will be Fist of War. This gives you more AoE and you'll do 20% more damage. You'll definitely not be using this more than every 6 seconds, so you almost always get the ancestral boost. Searing Flame is the second core, where it's going to do 25% less damage to the hit, but the ignite that it applies will be 75% stronger. And then Eternal Flame here will make that ignite duration twice as long. So you can see that the ignite is going to last 10 seconds and can do maybe on average about 50,000 DPS right here, in addition to the slam. And when you empower it with both Infernal Fury as well as Seismic Cry, it'll do a lot of damage to almost all of the bosses. And then I just use Primal Ornament as well as Fire Infusion for just additional damage on top. In terms of priming the bosses, because now you have to heavy stun the bosses to build glory, which I think you need 20 of here, which you can get from stunning a boss. You do need to stun bosses in order to use Hammer of the Gods. So the first one is I do use Fire Exposure on a completely separate note. This will reduce the boss and any other like tankier things fire resistance by 20, and this can bring it negative if you have enough fire penetration where their fire resistance is already 0. Second, Overpower will add 50% more stun buildup. This is pretty core. You can see here that the first slam actually has a non-physical buildup multiplier of 525. Removing this gem will significantly reduce it to 323. So that 50% here is really good for stunning bosses. And then the next 3 are Aftershock support, where taking Aftershock as well as Tremors will allow you to build up a lot of Aftershock chance and you finish it off with Reverberate. So Reverberate here is going to make significantly increase the aftershock chance of the Rolling Slam, where you can see that there's a base chance of 59% and 71, 35, and 24% chance respectively for 1, 2, or 3 aftershocks. Without the support gem, we're down to 25% for the first aftershock, and then additional ones will be 30, 15, and 10. So you can see that you're almost over doubling the amount of aftershocks we can get. So you can kind of see that in action here. If you're able to kind of prepare this, or if the boss does not move a lot, you can apply the Rolling Slam here. Let's just do 2 of them there, and you can see that it continues to aftershock. And if you're lucky, you can get a lot of aftershocks off. So that's 3 aftershocks, and you can definitely get up to 5, depending on your luck. So with all of those aftershocks, you'll quickly be able to stun most bosses and allow you to rip a Hammer of the Gods. And then, as that's also falling down, you can throw some more Rolling Slams in there to build up a lot of stun, so you can prime the next one. Next will be Herald of Ash. This will be really good for spreading your overkill damage, since these slams do so much damage. The small mobs will most likely die, and you just want better clear. With the buffs to Herald of Ash in 0.2 update, this is actually pretty good. So I use Persistence for longer Ignite, so this increases Ignite duration. Deadly Herald for just more damage. Fire Mastery just for more damage. And Strong-Hearted here is just completely optional. I had extra spirit, so I'm just using that here. For mobility, I use Shield Charge. This is really great, where you can Shield Charge, Leap Slam, and then Shield Charge. So that allows you to get around the map really quickly. Infernal Cry here is really important for just clear as well as bossing. I will often just Infernal Cry in a large mob just to get more damage, but Premediation is really great, so you're doing 50% more damage on your Hammer of the Gods. This is really core, as well as Tireless is just pretty nice. So when you use Infernal Cry, you have a 30% chance not to consume it. So you can see that it's still 1, and I actually got 2 Rolling Slams there with Infernal Cry. Ingenuity decreases the cooldown, and Raging Cry is pretty great as well, as it gives you a small burst of rage for you to cast Hammer of the Gods, just to increase the damage a little bit further as well. Seismic Cry will give you a guaranteed aftershock if you use it on a heavy stunned enemy. So once you heavy stun the boss, you Infernal Cry, Seismic Cry together, and then you throw Hammer of the Gods down. Overwhelming Presence will be reducing your enemy's ailments as well as stun thresholds, so that you can both ignite them as well as stun them easier. This is pretty core. I use Vitality for life regeneration, Cannibalism, and Herbalism. Out of these 3, you definitely want Cannibalism, as this is a large part of your sustain while killing enemies, but the other 2 are quite nice as well. Herbalism is probably the one I would drop if you had to drop one due to spirit constraints. And then lastly, Shockwave Totem. With the buff to Shockwave Totem, this is actually quite good for building up stun bar for the boss. You can see with the double attack time, it does go pretty quickly. So highly recommend it. It's really good for just keeping up the stuns build up bar on a boss when it's doing some kind of mechanic, so that way you can keep the stun bar without it decreasing. With that, just to kind of briefly look at the character stats now, I am sitting at about 4,500 HP. This is a good range. If I could squeeze out another 500 HP, that would be really nice, but 4,500 HP is a threshold where I'm generally pretty happy with. I'm also sitting with 151 spirit. You don't really need this much, but you do want a little bit on top to get all of those extra bonuses from the support gems, such as, Cannibalism, Vitality, Herbalism, and I would say Deadly Herald is really good, and you can definitely just drop Strong-Hearted, but having some additional spirit isn't bad. I think 130 is probably a decent number to sit at. I also have a little bit of armor as well as a little bit of physical damage reduction. This is kind of nice. I definitely notice it when I lose all of my armor, so it does do something, but it isn't like a super high priority, and I wouldn't really worry too much about it. All of the equipment I'm wearing gives armor, but I never really specifically care about the armor line. Then I have my block chance maxed out. I will talk about it a little bit later, but having increased block chance on your shield is really important for hitting 75% block with all of the reductions to how many jewels we can actually be using. For my resistances, 90 for all elemental, and I am capped on chaos. The optimization I would do here is to get 3 additional maximum chaos resistance on my shield to get 78%, but I would still need to find some more chaos res elsewhere in order to do that. Another stat to look at is life regeneration per second, so 450 life regeneration. This is really important with all of the skills using life for cost due to blood magic. Without decent health regen, the 544 leap slam here will be really significant. You can see as I toss out totems here, my health is rapidly decreasing, and without regeneration, this health bar will stay very low. Other stats, I think you definitely want some ailment threshold as well as stun threshold, but the exact number I'm not too sure about what you really need. I have 2,900 here. Whether that's a lot or not, I don't feel like I am really that impacted by ailments, even like freeze for example, so I don't feel like I get frozen very often. So I think this is a decent number. As for items, just going over the main one, I would say is your mace. You really want plus level to all melee skills. 6 or 7 is definitely ideal with as much physical damage as possible. Another line that's important here is 30% reduced attribute requirements. You probably need at least 25%. With this build only having 539 strength, you need about 600 strength, I believe, if you don't have a high roll on the attributes. So, or if you don't have the reduced attribute line at all. So that's quite important. So I think you can do the math if you know the reduced attribute based on your strength level, but just make sure you multiply it by 3 to get the strength you need to also wear a shield. For the shield, I'm using just life, strength, physical damage reduction here, and the last line is kind of the optional line. If you can get enough chaos resistance elsewhere, I would get maximum chaos resistance or maximum fire resistance if you're having a hard time hitting the cap. For all of the rest of the gear, I think it's pretty similar. You're going to want life, rarity, and strength, as well as chaos resist and fire resist. You don't need any other resistance, so you can see that I actually have some cold resist here, which comes from the boot. This is completely wasted, so if I could replace that with chaos resistance, that would be best, and then I could remove the chaos resistance line from the shield. So that would be the next ideal upgrade. None of your pieces should have anything except for fire and chaos resistance due to the fire resistance applying a half value for the other two. And fire resistance also contributes to your maximum fire resist, which also then contributes to your cold and lightning resist. So it's really important that you only have fire resistance. As for your other pieces, I think, yeah, I've covered the helmet, the gloves, as well as the boot. Basically, yeah, those stats, life, strength, those most important, with fire resist chaos, with the luxury stat of rarity. For the rings, you're going to want lines that increase your fire damage, so fire damage on attacks or increased fire damage is really good, but you're also just going to want life, rarity, strength, as well as just fire resist. Chaos is also perfectly fine here, so yeah, these are basically, it's really straightforward. They're just the lines you want, and there's not too much variation there, so it can be a little bit pricey to get all of those lines. For the amulet, the core line is plus levels to all melee skills, as well as just having as much life as possible. So here I have increased maximum life, just maximum life as a flat, as well as the melee skills. The fire resist as well as the spirit here are pretty optional. Having spirit on your amulet is really nice to have, as it will allow you to get more of those support gems for your spirit gems. But at the end of the day, you can probably give those up. It's not a huge deal. I do allocate acceleration here just for quality of life. This provides 30% movement speed as well as 10% skill speed. This kind of just makes everything a little bit faster and you can get around the map a little bit better. If you struggle with tankiness or with damage, you can look elsewhere, and there's definitely nodes that can help with that. I'm running one unique item here, which is the Inferno class belt. The 6% maximum fire resist here applies to the other stats as well, so I'm getting 3% all res, and the fire resistance it provides is just really nice for getting the other resistances there as well. And strength and armor are great stats, so highly recommend. For the flask, I use Olros Resolve Life Flask. This is actually really good because you can use a skill as well and then pop it due to your blood magic cost, allowing you to basically have a overshield of another 1500. So this can effectively increase your overall HP by 30-ish%, depending on, I guess, if you have the support gem here, herbalism on or not. But it's really nice to have. It's definitely saved me a whole bunch of times. It's not as optimal for boss fights because you only can use it 3 times. But you have enough health regen, and it's kind of a panic button for bosses. But while clearing, this can absorb a lot of extra damage on maps that might kill you, especially with mobs like that cap your health at 50%. Right after they die, you want to get back to full as soon as possible, and this flask will help you get there. So next, I'll go over the passive tree, starting with the Ascendancy. So in the beginning, you'll probably want to take all of these resistances so you get your all res capped as you enter maps, and the 4th one can probably be maximum life or strength depending if you need it for equipping your weapon. And then you would take off cold resist and lightning resist and take up coal stoker when you get your 6 points, and you would probably switch that over to having both of these as well as maintaining the fire resist here, so that should help you cap your all res. And then later, when you have a lot of fire resistances, you'll take the last nodes here to get all of your res up, and you can opt for both leather bindings here for maximum life regeneration per second, as well as having this physical damage taken as fire damage. That way you can actually reduce your physical damage by a significant chunk. I did forget to mention the body armor you want to be wearing. For me, I believe the optimal one is the Ornate Plate, as it gives a lot of health regen. And the jewel sockets here, I am using increased maximum life for all of them. For every single one of these are going to be increased maximum life. This will provide you a lot more effective health with increasing your health, and because you have the resistance is capped at 90%, each of those health, each of that point of life provides an insane amount of value compared to any of the other stats that you can be getting in these rune sockets. But the Ascendancy I think is pretty straightforward. You just want to get 90 all res, and these are the ones you take, and then you can switch the ones here off of this one in the early game, and you can definitely take the +5 to maximum fire resist if you're having trouble hitting the cap, but later on you should be able to take this one off in favor of Molten Symbol. For the rest of the points, I take all of these fire nodes because I am taking Avatar of Fire. So the core fire nodes I'm taking are down here with Smoke Inhalation for defense penetration, and Incendiary for just more damage. This entire tree here is really good with Fulmination Don't sleep on these ignite effects nodes. These 12% magnitude of ignites is really strong, and it's quite hard to actually increase the magnitude of your ignite. So make sure you 100% take these. You also get burning strikes here just for more fire damage, and burn away for also magnitude of ignite, penetration, and fire damage. These are just pretty straightforward fire nodes. And then over here, I'm pathing it all the way up here for emoliation for that magnitude of ignite, as well as taking burning nature here to increase the ignite duration, as well as just increase fire damage overall. Other points you want to look out for are blood magic, resolute technique, as well as giant's blood. As explained before, you do need giant's blood to hold both a two-handed mace and a shield. This is what you should probably be getting first, as having a shield will give you block chance, which is just a whole nother layer of defense that will significantly increase your survivability against projectiles and non-slam attacks. Then resolute technique here is also very important, as we don't want to miss our slams because they're so slow, and if you're going to miss a slam, it's extremely depressing, and we don't really crit anyways, so there's no point in, like, there's pretty much no downside here. And blood magic allows you to skip mana completely on your gear, and you can just funnel that into other things. With taking life regeneration, you should be able to heal all of the damage that you deal to yourself, so there is very low downside here, provided you have enough life regeneration. Let's see, other points that are nice to have. I do take a whole bunch of block nodes, so the block ones are here, as well as here. These are good. I can definitely take off beef here. It is providing a little bit of extra damage due to brute strength, but it's honestly just a bit of HP at the moment, so this is just providing about 60 HP. It could be channeled elsewhere for more damage. And then these points here just give strength, so just more HP, a little bit of tankiness, some good stats. And you definitely want unbending as well as titanic here. These just give you a lot of health, so very important. I would say don't sleep on these two. You do see that they do reduce your attack speed, but 30% increase in magnitude of ailments and duration, 20% on the duration is insanely huge, and it's really hard to pass up there. And I think most smiths should have noticed this one, where you get 1% maximum fire resist for each 40% uncapped fire resistance. So how that works here is I have 90 fire resistance, so I have 211 uncapped fire resistance. So that's going to be providing 5 maximum fire resist. And that 5 maximum fire resist will also get converted to cold and lightning. So that's how Smith is able to hit 90% pretty reliably, is due to this node, plus Inferno class here is really helpful, giving another 6 to all of them. So we're already going from 75 all the way to basically plus 11, so 86 already, and we only need to cover the last 4. So those last 4 points are covered from the jewels, so not this one, but I do have maximum fire resistance here, and I was able to replace them all 3, so the other ones are a little bit more optimized for fire damage, magnitude, and just a little bit of more ignite for damage. So I also got defense penetration here for fire resistance. That's pretty good, and don't want to forget that I also have some block chance here. So yeah, so you basically just want to compensate for whatever else you're lacking. So fire defense penetration, maximum fire resist, and block are very good here, as well as any other just like fire related nodes or melee damage. So that's most of the tree. You should be able to see the rest of it on max roll if you want to see the whole tree in of itself. And then to go over what I'm running for the Atlas tree. So I've cleared most of the content. I've been skipping on Arbiter because It's just not very viable for this build. This build doesn't have enough damage on the T4 Pinnacle bosses to kill them quickly. So they definitely can be killed and reliably, but the amount of time it takes to kill them makes Arbiter really hard due to how many mechanics he has. And Simulacrum right now is just really tough in general, and I don't like the Delirium mechanic personally, so I don't really run it just out of personal preference. But for the rest of this tree, for the Atlas tree, I'm completely focused on one, shrine buffs, because they are just so good for quality of life. They make clearing maps so much faster, and honestly, they're just fun to press, especially with the buff that makes them easy to click. Kind of a no-brainer for me. Other ones that I think are really important are getting explicit modifiers on waystones. This is really good when you're starting to juice your maps with a lot of mods, and when you're starting to be able to deal with the negatives of them. It's really important to take these. So getting the increased explicit modifiers will increase all the positives as well as the negatives. So it's just critical that you're able to deal with the negatives before running these. And this one is the same thing. You have a 25% chance for it to be the positives to be doubled, or not doubled, but 25% more, or 25% for the negatives. So you just gotta like hope it's landing on the 50-50 for it to be positive. And double effective precursor tablets, really important, as well as taking all of the increased effects there, as the precursor tablets only have boons on them, and you want to make those boons as strong as possible. Otherwise, this one's also very good. Increases the explicits for all of the precursors affecting it, so get another 3 to 6%, depending, maybe 9 if you get a 3-way overlap. For the mechanics themselves, I think they're pretty straightforward here, just getting more logbooks as well as more coins and rares for expedition. This is probably my favorite mechanic this league. For breach, I take the monster density here, a little bit more splinters, and I take multiple breaches, which has occurred quite often actually, and I take the faster speed, where we get a little bit more monster density. I tried Zestr's Madness for quite a while actually, but the Soul Eater modifier makes it so that some of those rares get insanely tanky if you kill the small ones first, and it's just too annoying to deal with, where you have to basically just ignore those rares. For Ritual, I think it's the same as last league. You want to increase your audience with the king odds as well as increasing your omen odds, and you just take these where you can reroll as well as defer for a cheaper cost. So I think the Alice trees are pretty straightforward. For the boss mapping, I think it's really straightforward as well. I just take shrines as well as increased experience. I could also switch to corruption now that I'm no longer planning to make it to 98, which would be a slow journey. But given that it's taken me maybe like 5 days to hit 97, I'm gonna guess it's gonna take maybe like over a week for sure to hit 98. Then I'm not really gonna be bothering, and I'm going to shift more towards getting enough loot to fund another character. So with that being the Atlas tree, I think I'll just kind of demo a map so that you get a clear picture of how easy this build is to play, as well as the bossing potential. So let's see. I think Valve Factory should be pretty straightforward. Do I have a map here? I think I set this up earlier. So I have this tier 15 that's all suffixes. The suffixes are pretty easy. There really isn't anything too egregious here. I usually avoid anything that makes them significantly tankier, such as increasing their maximum life, or if they do a lot of extra damage. So if the monster does extra damage and if there's extra chaos, it becomes quite deadly. This build is fine if they're a little bit fast, if they get the faster mod, but I try to avoid those, as well as temporal chains, because that just makes it a complete slog to play, and that one's just unfun. Like, it's very doable, but it's just definitely unfun. So this is the one mod you kind of have to be careful of on rares, which is the one that prevents you from healing above 50%. Otherwise, most of them are pretty straightforward. So for this map, I think there's a lot of complaints on this one in general, so this build really clears this map quite easily, and honestly I don't have any problems with it. Besides, I guess it's a little bit dark, but even with the mob density, none of the damage is really significant. So with Herald the Ash, you can see that it's spreading the fire damage pretty well. A lot of the times I end up just priming the Ignite, and you can kind of walk away. You'll be able to kind of get a better feel for it later, but if they're under a third health, then they're most certainly going to die. Most of the time it actually does half their health, so you can kind of just leave them after leap slamming into them. So most of these ritual mods are pretty easy. I'd say the only one you kind of have to worry about is the Chaos Blooms, the volatile plants, I guess, as well as the Rat Tornado, which is just pretty annoying because it shreds all of your armor, and it actually kind of hurts, so I wouldn't ignore that one. Otherwise, the other ones you don't even have to think about at all, especially the ones where it's just like has those little Chaos Blooms on the ground. Just the ones that have those floating orbs is the one you have to be concerned with. So overall, the clear here is pretty good. Taking a shrine here, just you can see it just makes it a lot easier, as they kind of just start dying without you even have to interact with them as much. Go ahead there and start the breach while I have the shrine buff. But for the most part, you can see my health isn't really getting impacted whatsoever, and that's just due to the health regeneration. So one of the things I do intentionally avoid on maps or waste stones are the ones that say you get reduced health recovery. That is actually pretty bad, and you'll definitely notice your health dipping a lot more, just due to not having the regen to upkeep it. So that breach, I probably could have cleared a little bit better. It's definitely a lot better if I'm just hopping around a lot more, but I'm not really bothering to min-max it right now. There are a lot of waystone drops here due to, I think, yeah, 270%. I'm not sure if they got doubled or something, or any of the effects got doubled, but I wouldn't be surprised, since I don't actually know if there are actually no prefix mods. It might be guaranteed that it will add another 25% to the suffixes. So yeah, I guess the crit hit chance and the crit damage bonus is not really consistent enough for me to be concerned, and the ailment threshold and resistances are not really an issue, since I do have defense penetration and I do so much damage that it doesn't really matter if they have ailment threshold, because they're probably going to get ignited anyways. So expedition's really fun. Kind of just get to like pop all of them as they pop out. I'll kind of take some large chunks here. So I haven't taken anything really dangerous. All the extra damage stuff is pretty dangerous. I'd say the ones that reduce your maximum resistances aren't bad, unless you take the one that also increases their damage. So that's the only time I'd be really concerned. I'd say the expedition is also pretty profitable right now, due to the high value of all these scythe artifacts. Since the scythe artifacts are worth a decent chunk, it also means the sun artifacts worth a decent chunk, and you can definitely just make a solid profit with it. I guess another thing why Expedition is so nice is that they're really fast to clear. Unlike Ritual, where you have to kind of like keep going and starting these altars. I really like just being able to like complete the mechanic in about 30 seconds. So you can see here I actually have this overshield for the guard. So that kind of actually lets you see how much damage I actually am taking. So I can pop it again here. See, my health isn't decreasing very much at all. And most of that is actually due to all of the 90 elemental reses I have. So you got a lot of tankiness, and with all that damage being reduced, you can see that my life regen just kind of like tops me off even if I do take damage. Alright, so go over and head over to the boss now. Probably missed the ritual, but find it after the boss. So I would first start with the totem. If you're able to prep some rolling slams on the boss, I would highly recommend doing so. You can see even if I walk away now, those aftershocks are adding up. And if I just go ahead and hit the boss here, quickly build up that stun bar, hammer the gods, and then resume rolling slam. So the boss here is pretty tanky due to all of the elemental resistances it has, and the stun bar would normally also be breaking way faster if I didn't have. Looks like he has almost like 2.5 times the amount, so definitely tougher than without all of those mods on. And let me find that last ritual, and that will pretty much be complete. Oh, it must be this one, honestly. What am I doing? So you can see even if I'm bleeding, I have enough health regen to kind of counteract most of it, but due to it eating most of the health regen, you'll probably need to use a flask just to kind of top off, depending on how big the original hit was. Yeah, altogether, Ritual is pretty easy. All the mechanics are pretty easy, honestly. I'm not really too worried about any of them. It just really depends on how many damage mods you apply onto the maps, and if you really keep the damage mods light, then you're pretty much unkillable. Let's grab this. That's all I have for mapping. So with that, I hope this video was helpful for you. I think this build is very consistent, very strong, and really easy to level with. If you want to check here, I've died 103 times. I believe 62 of those deaths were during campaign. So I've only died a little bit over 40 times once I hit maps. Most of those were also just from trying to do pinnacle bosses for the first time. So I definitely died like maybe 3 or 4 times on Arbiter and a few times on maybe like Ritual. just as I was learning to do them again. So deaths very few, I would say, compared to most characters, and that made leveling honestly really easy since there weren't too many setbacks in terms of what got me killed. But anyways, I hope this was helpful. Please leave a comment and like and subscribe if this was helpful. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to help with any part of the build. I do know that most of this was centered towards what the build should look at in the end game, but if you want help for kind of just progressing, let me know, and I'll try to get back to you in the comments. Thanks for watching.